Okay, folks, here we go. 14 reasons not to fear house price drops. QV. Okay, folks, so here we are. This is 14 reasons not to fear. Now, I put Fife house price drops, but really, this is house price drops right across the UK, possibly right across the world as well, because it is completely relevant to us in the UK right now, and Scotland and Fife overall. So, the Fife property market has experienced a boom between the summer of 2020 and the late summer of 2022, fueled mainly by pandemic-induced trends such as land and building transaction tax, stimulus, and lower mortgage rates, the race for space, and the rise for remote working. 2023 is a different story, though. For the housing market overall, with cooling demand, rising mortgage rates, and declining home sales from the previous 2 years. Many homeowners are now concerned about the possible fall in their home prices as newspapers predict doom and gloom and recession for the housing market. You can see there straight away how the Nationwide came out yesterday and said all of a sudden house prices are dropping at their 15-year, 19-year level as the fastest rate ever. And yet the land registry the week before announced house prices have gone up by 3.2% in the last year. And in actual fact, in Fife, they've gone up by 4.8%. So who's telling the truth? Does it really matter? Because this is about 14 reasons not to fear house price drops. And I'll tell you the reason why and why they might not happen, why they might happen. So, this nonetheless, there are several reasons why homeowners should not fear these house price drops. Now, let's explore the 14 key factors to provide reassurance in uncertain times. The first one for me has really got to be the strength of the job market. The job market is crucial in determining home prices. It directly impacts on income levels. Fortunately, the job market overall remains really robust in the UK, with unemployment hovering near an all-time low of 3.6%. Labour shortages are currently more significant concerning the lack of job opportunities. As long as the job market actually remains stable, home prices should remain firm and prevent any house price falls. The second one for me, 2023 is entirely different to 2008. Because there is repercussions where people think about 2008 all the time. And we always refer back to 2008 because of the catastrophic house price crash. It is completely different. It is like comparing apples with pears. Comparing the Fife housing market to the 2008 credit crunch reveals significant differences. The housing bubble that led the crisis was primarily driven by subprime mortgages in the US, resulting in a wave of defaults right across the whole of the world. This spread to the UK, and the banks stopped lending to each other and mortgages and borrowers as well. Today's property market differs significantly for four reasons. Firstly, homeowners have built substantial equity in their properties since 2008. Secondly, homeowners with a mortgage have taken advantage of remortgaging at lower fixed rates during the pandemic, meaning they are immune to any recent height rises in interest rates. Third, the banks are prepared to lend money, unlike 2008, where there was a severe lack of credit, as the banks were not prepared to lend money at that point in time. So that's completely different as to now. The banks are still following them oversell to make sure you can pass the mortgage criteria so they can lend you money. And finally, this one about this different from 2008, as the Bank of England in 2014 told lenders to stress test every single mortgage application for up to 6 to 6.5% mortgage rates. We're at that right now. All these people since 2014 have been stress tested at these levels. These are the 4 points that have reduced the threat of widespread defaults, even if the UK economy were to enter recession. Third one out of the 14, the long game for Fife house ownership, and ownership right across the country as well in general. So what do I mean by that? Well, most homeowners view their household as more than a house. It's a home. It's more than just a financial asset. The home represents a lifestyle choice. Despite potential house price declines over the next few years, homeowners' long-term perspective should remain intact. I mean, throughout British history, if you look at it, home prices have always appreciated over time, even since the financial crisis. If you go way back to the very beginning, about 50 years ago, when they were taking the note of what the prices were for house prices were selling for literally hundreds, if not a few £1,000s. Do you think the house prices have gone up since then? Absolutely. And if you look at it year on year, even in the Fife market, even in the Scotland market, and even in the UK market overall, the land registry registers in the last year, house prices have still gone up, mainly across the board for everybody. I think as well, homeowners who held on to their properties during the credit crunch eventually saw house prices return to the pre-credit crunch in 2000, since 2007, and by peaking in September 2016, that's when it kind of recovered to that point. And this is where playing the long game is so important in this property market overall. Since September 2016, £40,100 has been added in additional equity to every Fife home, for example, on average. Think about how much that is over the whole of the UK and over the Scotland. It's probably significantly more, because the average Fife home is round about 170,000 to buy right now. The average Scottish home is round about the 190,000 mark, and the average UK home is round about the 250, 260,000 mark. So it's easy to get fixated on the short term and forget the medium to long term gains made in property. There's no surprise if property actually dropped in value in 10%, even this year. It's gone up 30% in the last 3 years. So the differential is you're up 20% still. See what I mean about the long game and how you shouldn't be too worried about this. The fourth one for me is inflation is good news for homeowners and landlords. I'll say that again. Inflation is good news for homeowners and landlords. Why do you say that, Jim? Well, inflation may be a cause for concern for many aspects of daily life. It can benefit most homeowners and landlords. Inflation often leads to increased house prices and reduces any mortgage's real value. When your house price goes up, your mortgage value stays the same. So the deficit destruction in the mortgage value actually destroys. So the 60,000 you've got in a mortgage is no longer worth 60,000 in today's money. It's probably worth a lot less. So you're actually getting a reduction in the value of the mortgage while actually getting an increase in the value of the property. So it acts as a hedge. Resultant inflation will improve affordability, therefore supporting the home prices overall because your house has gone up in value and you've secured more equity in it. The key is avoiding inflation leading to a full-blown recession, which could negatively impact on the housing market. Okay, so what is number 5 here? So I would say positive implications for going up market. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the national home price decline has been good news for homeowners looking to move up the ladder and to bigger, more expensive properties. Such a decline would reduce the price gap between the selling the home and purchasing the next one. So if you're an upgrader, you should actually welcome a decline in property prices, because the price and the 10% reduction at the higher value you're about to buy represents a bigger difference than the difference that you're actually taking a hit on your existing property if you've got a lower value property. So if you're an upgrader, you should be welcoming price declines. Next one, number 6 for me, persistent housing shortage. This ain't going to change anytime soon. The UK government and the Scottish government just haven't built enough houses. And the private sector hasn't built enough houses either. There's supposed to be at least 280,000 houses built every single year in the UK, 25,000 of them are supposed to be in Scotland. They've got nowhere near that over the years. At one point in time, they reached 22 in the last 2 or 3 years. But on average, in Scotland, for example, they've only ever got to about 18,000 out of the 25. Now, if you look at that over a 10-year period, that's a 7,000 shortfall each year. There's 70,000 houses behind over the last 10 years. And they're meant to do 20,000, 25,000 a year. Therefore, they're 3 years behind already. They're not going to catch up anytime soon. So the housing shortage, the persistent housing shortage and the scale back construction, and in terms of that, is actually propping up the housing market and keeping it stable in place. I mean, given the cooling market and the rise in mortgage rates, home builders are still cautious about increasing their construction. As long as the housing shortage persists, which it is right now, because there's less properties on the market than there was all these years ago as well. And even before the pandemic, there's less properties on the market now for sale than there was then, which means it should help sustain home prices overall. So what about number 7? Well, the rental market dynamics. Here we go. Soaring rental prices. Another consequence of inflation, and another reason why homeowners will be content with their current ownership status. Homeowners with fixed rate mortgages enjoy stability of locked in monthly mortgage payments. In contrast, renters face challenges with increasing rents of 10 or even 20% per annum on new properties coming onto the market. Existing renters are protected by the legislation that's in place in Scotland just now. Due to the ongoing lack of properties to rent, this actually keeps this market very, very buoyant right now. So the rise in rental prices is encouraging more people to consider home ownership, maintaining demand and supporting property prices. Number 8 out of the 14, the anticipated mortgage rate reduction. We've all been talking about it. NatWest is actually decreasing their rates as we speak almost. They've announced it today. They're actually going to decrease some of their mortgage rates. So while recent rate hikes from the Bank of England have affected the housing market, there's an expectation of easing in the near future. According to the money market's latest forecast, based on the 5-year swap rate, that's the bank's rates that they lend to each other, which keeps your mortgage rates down. The bank rate is projected to fall in early 2024. A decline in the Bank of England rate would lead to a decrease in mortgage rates. If the economy remains stable during that period, declining mortgage rates could support housing price growth. This is why you should buy now, by the way, because if this happens, we're going up in price again. And we said this last year, and we're up 4.8% in Fife this year, and we're up 3.5% almost in Scotland this year as well. So everybody waited last year to try and buy this year, hoping that prices would drop. It just didn't happen. Now is the time to buy if it suits for you right now, especially if it's a long-term purchase. It makes no difference. I'll tell the story again. I bought my house for 260,000, spent 100,000 on it. It was 360,000. Credit crunch came along, dropped to 300,000 in value, so I lost 60,000 overnight with the credit crunch. My house is now 450,000 and I'm still in it today. So it makes no difference. It's gone up in value over the medium to long term. So now is always the time if the circumstances suit for you. If you're doing short-term buying, then speak to us first before you do that, because the numbers might not make sense and it might make more important sense for actually to rent. But we can tell you all about that and how to work that out. So the anticipated mortgage rate reduction is on the cards. Number 9 for me is the expected moderate decline. Economists generally predict that any potential home price decline will be modest. With the current support of the housing shortage, combined with inflationary trends, and well-capitalised mortgage owners, a moderate single-digit decrease is more likely than a severe crash like 2008. Such a moderate decline should be less intimidating for homeowners overall. Number 10 for me, the potential for renovation costs dropping. So what do I mean by the potential for renovation costs dropping? Well, the demand for home improvement during the pandemic led to a surge of 41.9% in construction materials in the 2 years within and after lockdown. However, in the last 12 months, overall building costs have dropped by 1% despite inflation, and some notable drops include timber dropping 27.6% over the last previous 12 months, although cement is up 13.7%. Price reductions in new construction might lead to an even more easing of renovation costs. The trajectory of renovation costs will depend on the housing market and really the broader economic conditions. So let's look at number 11 out of 14. The property market loop of recovery. Here we go. This is the natural cycle that happens in the property market. This is why you should never fear house price drops. If home prices were to fall, it would likely be driven by weaker home buyer demand than by an oversupply of homes. Such a decline would indicate an economic slowdown or a recession, prompting the Bank of England to respond with interest rate cuts. Lower interest rates would subsequently reduce mortgage rates, giving home buyers a boost in affordability and ultimately contributing to the market's recovery. Job done. The natural cycle. Number 12 out of 14. House price drops only affect if you sell. Think about that. What did I just say about the house I bought, how much I invested in it, and what it's worth today? It's only realised when you sell. So if a house price drops, it's completely irrelevant if you're not selling. So a decline in home prices might psychologically impact homeowners, because it does, even though it may not affect them directly if they do not plan to sell soon. House prices can only affect you if you're actually moving. Now, 96.54% of homeowners will still be in their homes in the next 12 months. So they won't lose money if their property market dips at all. 96.54% will not move in the next 12 months. So these people, if you're 96.54%, you don't need to worry about house price drops in the next 12 months, because it won't make any difference to you at all. So the price change only affects those looking to buy and sell. Don't be held hostage to these market trends. Know when to buy, and just as importantly, know when to sit tight. So number 13 is the actual value of home ownership. So what do I mean by the actual value of home ownership? Well, let me explain. The pandemic has brought a heightened attention to the value of homes, with widespread discussions on the housing market and price speculations. However, homeowners' connection to their homes go beyond financial considerations. It is often rooted in the relationships shared with loved ones, the sense of community, and the peace of mind derived from home ownership. And finally, the efforts that you've actually invested in the property. The true value of home ownership completely transcends even monetary figures overall. So this is what I talk about, the value, the actual value of home ownership. It's what you've got in it. It's what you've got emotionally invested in as well. It's just as important. And that's one of the reasons why never to fear house price drops. Finally, for me, for number 14, the rarity of prolonged price declines. Let us cover this subject about rarity of long price declines. Let's look at this in detail. Prolonged home price declines lasting 5 years plus, especially those that are severe in the early mid-1990s era housing bust, are extremely infrequent. Throughout the last century, national home prices have only declined occasionally and typically required unique combinations of events for that to happen. While the recent price surges have led to speculation about potential declines and numerous market tailwinds, and the reasons above should prevent a sharp plunge and potentially avert any significant house price crashes. But you've got to ask overall, what if house prices actually drop? Well, let's just ignore the 14 points I mentioned above and let's see what a price reduction would mean for homeowners overall. We'll just take Fife for an example because we're in Fife for Fife properties, but it's equally applicable to the whole of the UK and Scotland and Glasgow and Edinburgh and Lothians and Dundee and Highlands and Islands. Anywhere this is relevant to. So let's look at the Fife property market. Ignore these 14 points I just said now. The peak of the property market just before the credit crunch hit in our local authority in Fife in September 2007, when the average property value was £127,287. The Fife property market bottomed out in March 2009, when the Fife properties dropped to £106,359. That is a drop of 16.4%. Today, the average Fife property stands at 167,433. Now that's recently just gone up in the last week to about 170,000. So if house prices dropped 10%, say from that point to 150,689, it would only mean returning to levels where the Fife house prices were actually in June 2021. And nobody's complained about those, are they? And the house prices in June 2021, because they all went up. Now, don't get me wrong. If house prices drop by 10%, a tiny percentage of homeowners, that's 2.83% of all homeowners that have bought in the last 2 years, will be in negative equity. I'll say that again, because a lot of people think everybody's going to be catastrophically negative equity if house prices drop by 10% right now, today. Only 2.83%, 2.83% of homeowners, all homeowners who have bought in the last 2 years, will actually be in negative equity. However, that's only an issue of the desire to sell the property, isn't it? Because if you don't sell, how could you be in negative equity? And as we know, homeownership is a long-term thing. And the most of these that would be in negative equity will probably be on a five-year fixed rate low mortgage deal from before, because it's only in the last 2 years. But what if house prices, Fife house prices, dropped by the same percentage, 16.4%? You know where I'm going with this, because I've spoken about this just recently. 16.4%, as mentioned above in the credit crunch. If this was the case, then Fife house prices would only return to house price levels achieved in August 2020. That's it. They'd only go back to August 2020 when it was actually the pandemic, and that's nothing serious. Although the number of people in negative equity would slightly increase in that scenario. So as Fife homeowners face uncertainty regarding potential house price drops, because remember, this is all just potential, pie in the sky, blue sky thinking, but remember, this is based on fact, what I'm doing right here. It's crucial to recognise various factors that support the housing market's resilience. While economic conditions continue to fluctuate, history has shown that housing values tend to appreciate over the long term. Wouldn't it have been great if your granny or great granddad or your great grandmother had bought a house and kept a hold of it since 50 years ago? Because it would have gone up exponentially by now. They were literally buying them for hundreds, if not a few £1,000s. So over the long term, house prices always go up. So overall, homeowners can take comfort in the differences between the 2023 market and the 2008 housing bubble, including stronger equity positions and a more regulated lending environment than there was before. As we navigate through the property cycles, homeowners should remain focused on their long-term goals. I mean, the strength of the job market, for example, and the true value of their homes can bring beyond monetary considerations overall. By acknowledging these factors, homeowners can confidently approach potential price declines and adapt to the market overall. I mean, this is just my thoughts. I'd be interested to hear yours as well. And on that note, guys, until next time, I'm Jim Parker for Fife Properties TV.